They are not in uniform. Hamas is simply dressed up like civilians. They are mixed with civilians. When people go to the aid centers, Hamas is shooting at them, is shooting at the aid center staffers. Worse than this, Hamas has been smuggling weapons, explosives, and other military equipment using the aid trucks.
The West has many things going for it, but admitting when their narrative is incorrect is just not one of those things. And their narrative right now of the innocent Palestinians is so strong that they refuse to listen to even somebody coming directly from the inner echelons of this terrorist organization. The son of Hamas, so famously known now within the pro-Israeli movement, is somebody who has tried to tell the West time and time again what it is that Hamas want, what their real agenda is, and the fact that they want to come for the West. But yet the world refuses to listen to him, but we do not. Let's dive right in.
Perspective from someone I value very highly and I have missed. The son of a founding member of Hamas, who flipped to secretly work with Israel's intelligence services, Mosab Hasan Yousef, better known as the Green Prince. Hello, my friend. I've missed you. It's good to see you.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you as well.
So, I give you this proposition. It has gone on too long, and there is too much suffering, and Israel has not done enough to stop it. So America must withdraw its aid until Israel does better to stop the starvation in Gaza. Is that a righteous position?
No, not at all. It's Israel is doing everything within their ability to minimize the civilian suffering, the civilian casualty, exposing their military plans to make sure that civilians would evacuate. While Hamas terrorists have been weaponizing civilians. We said this from day one, and this is why I recommended isolating civilians from Hamas terrorists.
Something that Israel is trying to do, but the West keeps on stopping us.
Because Hamas, they are not in uniform. Hamas is simply dressed up like civilians. They are mixed with civilians. When people go to the aid centers, Hamas is shooting at them, is shooting at the aid center staffers. Worse than this, Hamas has been smuggling weapons, explosives, and other military equipment using the aid trucks. I saw that with my own eyes. I have been to Gaza multiple times since the beginning of the war. And I've been to the centers where Israel scans thousands of trucks going into Gaza. Each item is a suspicious item that it could have some military equipment that could prolong the war in Gaza. And Israel does not want this to continue. Now, what we are witnessing, Chris, we are witnessing a collapse of society. This is not a famine. This is not a genocide. A genocide and famine require, or starvation of the population of Gaza requires intent. Israel does not have the intention to starve the people of Gaza.
This is such a good and important point. Intent is a huge part of genocide, right? And the Israelis have been very, very clear about the fact that we have sent in so much aid. We have sent in so much aid. Now, you all know, I don't think we should send in any aid. I don't think that that's the right thing. Look, if the Palestinians are struggling, that is a ramification for their actions. We gave them this land. We gave them the land of Gaza. They absolutely obliterated any rights that they had to it, and now they have to pay the price of it. Now, does that mean that I don't care about Palestinian children who are suffering? Of course not. But at the end of the day, the truth is very simple. It comes down to this. If something bad is happening, what is the reason for that? And you have to understand the reason to understand the context. And as we've said on here many, many times before, it is not A to J. And as we have said on here many, many times before. You can't jump from A to X. It's A, B, C, D. If you see starving Palestinians, who is responsible for that? And the answer to that is always going to be their government, the people in their vicinity. So when you look at the situation and you see that Israel is giving a huge amount of aid, but it's stuck on the borders because the UN won't distribute it, or Hamas won't distribute it, or Hamas come in and fire at the distribution centers because they don't want the Palestinians to have access to the aid, because then that makes their entire propaganda machine fail, then you have to understand that Palestinians starving equals Hamas being bad, which means if you want Palestinians to not be starving, you need to equal that with Hamas no longer existing. And who is helping with that? Israel. And yet our hands continue to be tied. It is absolutely absurd and crazy.
Perspective from someone I value very.
Now, and the world would condemn Hamas, condemn Israel.
But that
requires intent. Israel does not have the intention to starve the people of Gaza. It's madness to think this way, because this would backfire, and the world would condemn Hamas, condemn Israel.
But that's exactly
so obviously
that's what's happening.
Yes, but
that's what's happening right now, because you have all these aid organizations saying that almost 4 in 10 Gazans are going days without eating, that we're on the verge of a catastrophe. You see all the images of the kids with the pots. This could be different. We could have a flood of aid going in there, regardless of whatever Hamas is going to do with it, and that this is a major reason why sentiment in America and elsewhere in the world has moved against Israel. If for that reason alone, why not remedy the situation and make it clear that nobody has to hold out a bucket to get food in Gaza?
Well, the Palestinian sympathizers, or in other words to say the anti-Israeli camp worldwide, had they condemned Hamas from day one instead of being focused on demonizing Israel and, in fact, dehumanizing the Jewish people, had they condemned Hamas from the beginning, we would have not been in this difficult situation. The ongoing crisis in Gaza is the responsibility of Hamas. And people choose to see it differently. You know, they want to save the starving children on one hand, but on the other hand, they don't want to condemn Hamas. Well, how can we do this?
Right, and I think this is, again, such a significant point. If you want the starving children to no longer be starving, look for the people who are starving the children and remove them. That is not Israel, that is Hamas. And what the West is then doing is saying, okay, well, how can we hold and tie Israel's hands even more? Let's recognize a Palestinian state, for example. Let's give Hamas the prize that they are really, really hoping for. Let's let them do a massacre, starve their entire population for 2 years, kill multiple hostages and refuse to give them back. Leave negotiations, which they have currently done, and still, let's reward them because we've seen a picture of a child being starving. You need nuance. You have to have nuance in these conversations. You have to be able to understand the cause root of all of this evil, and yet the response is, oh, I've seen a picture of a child with some sort of bucket, therefore that must be Israel's fault. That just must be the Jews' fault. It must be the Jews because they're at war. No. Actually, that's not what's going on at all. And I don't understand why this is so hard for people to understand, and especially when you have somebody coming from the inner echelons of Hamas, son of Hamas, he grew up there, and he is publicly saying to the world, this is what is going on, this is what they are doing, and yet the world refused to agree and says, no, he must be wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about. We know. It is the Jews. It is Israel. Make it make sense.
Perspective from someone I value. But my friend, I think President Trump, here are words you're not going to hear me say too often. I think he seems to have this right in this moment. He says Hamas has to surrender. They have to give back the people they stole. There's too much deprivation in Gaza. Israel has to find a way with the allies to let in a lot more aid. Why can't those two ideas go together? Hamas has to surrender. It's a terroristic group that has said it will seek to destroy Israel as soon as it can, so they can't stay in power. They must give back the people, and this area must be flooded with aid yesterday. Why can't those two things go together?
Well, the area has been flooded with aid, but we have a problem with distribution because Hamas is shooting at people who take aid from the United States and Israel. Basically, Hamas is telling the world that we are the only legitimate authority in Gaza, and any third party that is trying to help the Gazans in this crisis is illegitimate. And this is how Hamas is trying to pressure the global community to keep them in power. Hamas is running out of time. They have lost many of their cards. What they have now is the hostages and the Gaza civilians, and they have been manipulating this entire situation. So, okay, we can blame Israel for the crisis, never condemn Hamas, and expect from the crisis to end tomorrow. It won't. It will continue for years. You know, Hamas in the past kept the Israeli hostage, Gilad Shalit, for 5 years. And Hamas is willing to use the Gazan civilians for the next years. They don't care how many people would die. They don't care if the entire hostages died. They just want to stay in power. And this has been their goal. And
I think the question that he asks here, it's like, well, why can't we get Hamas to just give up and then give out the aid? And it's like, yeah, that would make sense if Hamas were an entity that you could talk to, because they should have surrendered months and months and months ago if they cared about the Gazan population, and if they cared about actually feeding them, and if they cared about the war ending, then that would have happened. But that's not Hamas's intention. Once again, these questions are always, even though I really like this guy and he tends to be really good at this, but the questions are always making it sound like Hamas really want to surrender and Israel are just the one stopping it. That is not the case. The responsibility, the onus always is falling on Hamas, and it always comes back to this. Every time you look at anything in the conflict, it always comes back to this. Anyone suffering, anyone struggling, it is always the responsibility of Hamas, and we have concrete proof. As he just said, look, there's the Gazans who are suffering, and there's the hostages. Hamas could stop this war tomorrow by giving the hostages back, and then the Gazans would be fine. They could also allow the civilians to have food by just not shooting at the American distribution. The amount of aid here is never and has never been the question, although I think we're in the wrong for sending any aid in, because I think it is empowering Hamas, and that's what we're seeing. Everybody is missing the psychological piece here. That is, Hamas will not relinquish power under any circumstances, no matter what.
Are basically helping them to stay in power and indirectly keeping the war going for eternity.
Yeah. Mosab, I appreciate your perspective, especially by someone who has insanely gone back and been on the ground in Gaza. And I say it that way. I wish I could go, but I don't have everybody in Hamas looking to kill me the way you do. So it's very brave to go there, but I appreciate.
Look, it's so simple. It really is so simple. The truth is almost always simple. Look, it's so simple. The truth is almost always so simple. If you put the responsibility just directly on Hamas and you realize that this is not an entity that you can work with, this is not an entity that has the Palestinians in mind, this is not an entity that cares at all for the hostages, and it is not an entity that cares for diplomatic solutions. It is not interested at all in any of those things. It's a radical jihadi group that just wants to dominate not just Israel, but the world. If you start to see it from that lens and you realize that the conversations that the West is having about negotiations and release and who should rule Gaza is of zero interest to Hamas, that's when you start to realize that the real cause of all of the issues from beginning to end have always come down to the fact that we have given this terrorist group a huge amount of power. Recognizing a Palestinian state, calling out Israel for not distributing aid, pushing and promoting the narrative and the images that are coming out from Gaza is the direct thing that is prolonging this conflict. And it has been from the beginning, and it will be forever a conflict if people do not start to understand Hamas is the cause, and until they are eradicated, eliminated, and Israel does everything in its power to make that happen, this conflict will continue forevermore.